welcome to the session, all of you. I am Kalyani Mishra Jha, and today we are here to discuss about next block of MEG 1, that is block 2 for Edmund Spencer. So, as we all are aware that every person is born in a particular time period or a time frame, and they do some kind of a recognizable mark or a remarkable work in their period that is learned by the world, that people come to recognize him. We used to talk him, study about them, discuss about them. For example, we are the people of modern age. We live in the modern era. Similarly, Edmund Spencer was a famous poet of his times of the Elizabethan era, and due to his various and tremendous amazing works, that Elizabethan era is also known by the name of Age of Spencer. Though there were many of the poets and they tried their very well, but still, it was Edmund Spencer who made it to be the best. And for this reason, he is known to be the poet of the poets of those era. Now, so let us understand very briefly about the age and how Spencer made himself recognized during those times. So let's start with the Elizabethan era. The Elizabethan era was from 1558 to 1603. This was known to be the golden age of literature. That is not only for the literature, but also in the field of fine arts, paintings, singing, many of the scientific discoveries. This period coincides with the Tudor monarch or the Tudor period also, as we can say that when Queen Elizabeth I, she was crowned, it was kind of the end of the Tudor period and starting of the Elizabethan era. Now, the important point to be focused that this period is said to be the Elizabethan era. Why? Because Elizabeth was a queen. Queen Elizabeth I was a person whose decision made this period, made this time as a golden age. Golden age for what? Golden age for literature, golden age for trade and commerce, golden age for communication, golden age for transfer of mode of what we should say, that literature, transfer of culture, and many more things. New roads were built. She thought for the people. She did many work that people, so that she did so much work for the society. She developed with the people. It was a kind of developing age of those times. And this is also one of the important reasons that this Elizabethan era is said to be the age of Renaissance. Age of Renaissance. What is Renaissance? Renaissance is kind of a rebirth or revival of anything. जिसे हम हिंदी में कहते हैं पुनर्जागरण या किसी चीज का उत्थान होना. And here, as we know, अब Renaissance कहीं से चल के तो आया नहीं होगा. So definitely Renaissance was developed earlier in Italy in 14th century. Then it went, I said. Then it was seen in Europe, and then further it was in England during the Elizabethan age. Now here we can say that it was the Renaissance of literature, Renaissance of discoveries, Renaissance of learning. Schools were open, language were open to all. That was means things that were not so common in Tudor period. They were made common during the Elizabethan age. Now the dramatists like William Shakespeare, Sir Christopher Marlowe, prose writers like Sir Philip Sidney were important people important people who inspired other age literature writers too. Now the poets, dramatists of this age were highly inspired from literature work, traditional forms and culture of Europe and Italy. Now let us have a look how the information flows on. The way it was in the way the Italian writers took inspiration from Greek and Roman poets, and the English writer of Elizabethan era took inspiration from the Italian writers. And it was the age of Elizabeth, that in the age of Elizabeth, the sonnets that were, especially the sonnets were written in this time, they were completely or highly inspired or influenced from the Italian works or the literature. So we can clearly see from here the chain formation of flow of culture and literature of those times. It was not limited to a certain area. Now, as if in today's pandemic situation, we can very well understand that we are sitting on the home, we have mobile phones in our hand, we have television, we have social media to gather various informations and all. But what about those times? They don't have any mobile or TVs at those times. So in that time, Elizabeth was a queen who was herself interested in arts and literature. She was the person, I think she also did some small magic tricks, and she was a quite fond of dancing. She was herself was an art lover. So what she did, she opened the theaters for people. She opened the literature. She just said, okay, we will do anything for development of our country. She made such kinds of decision that today we know that age as an Elizabethan age. That is a famous age for Elizabethan age. Either we study in science or in painting, whatever we study, we say it as Elizabethan age just because of a decisions. Now, why these times very famous one of we can't miss our one of the famous dramatist of those times, Sir Christopher Marlowe and Sir William Shakespeare. Now William Shakespeare was one of the best dramatists of those period, and it was said as a Shakespearean age also, or the age of Shakespeare. Why? He was the best dramatist. Actually, what he did, he too was inspired from the Greek and the Latin cultures and various other cultures. What he did, he wrote various kinds of dramas, including varied kinds of emotions of human beings. Like he included tragedy, comedy, he included romance, and along with the culture and tradition of Greek and Rome. And what happened with that? People used to watch them. People used to follow those steps. People even used to say, oh, this is very beautiful culture. We should do it. Now here, let's talk about very important thing that we should know about our first English person, Sir Thomas More. He was inspired from Greek tradition and wrote work in Latin Utopia. This is very important point to be noted, that this person, Sir Thomas More, was an English writer. But what he did, he was inspired so much that he written it and his work in Greek. And this is a point where he introduced Greek and Latin to the English or English literature. Now, in this series, we have so many poets of Elizabethan era. Please, like Thomas Watt, 1503 to 42, Walter Raleigh, 1550 to 1618, John Davies, 1569 to 26. And definitely, we cannot forget our today's topic, Edmund Spenser. Sir Edmund Spenser, he was from 1557 to 1599. And but instead of these poets, the name I took of the poets, they were not only the poets, they were also the courtier of the London. Even Edmund Spenser was also a courtier of the London. He was a court person. Now, but it was Edmund Spenser. He invented his Spenserian stanza. Sorry for my words. He's invented the Spenserian stanza, and he did such remarkable works. And he when he started writing his original work, he never stopped. So let us know about Edmund Spenser. As we all are aware that not very much is known about Edmund Spenser's early life or early things. So it is said that he was born in a poor family to John, a cloth merchant, and Elizabeth Spenser, probably in the year 1557. And also the important point here, we can note that Elizabeth, or if the Elizabethan age starts from 1558. I think he was born to be a poet, maybe that's why. So, and he died in 13 January 1599 in London. So, after getting the basic education from the Midland School, Spenser joined Pembroke College in Cambridge University in 1569 as a Caesar or a poor scholar. And further, he completed his education from the Cambridge University. Now, when he took admission in the Cambridge University, he has to undertake various type of odd jobs, various menial jobs, in return for the education, so that he can study over there. This was also the year he his first poetry was published. Actually, it was not his original poetry; rather, it was a translation from the biblical book of Revelation, which consists of the four sonnets of the 16th century French poet Joachim du Bellay, along with translations of French version of some epigrams by Italian poet Petrarch. And this was the Cambridge days. He got a very good friend of as a Gabriel Harvey. as they got a good friend because they both of were having the similar background. Actually, both of were from the poor family, and Edmund Spencer was so much inspired with him, or should say that he was so much in friendship. He was so good friends that he wrote his first book, his first work, that is the Shepherd's Calendar, with here portraying or saying about the friendship, but he changed the figure as Hobinol. Sorry if I pronounce it wrong. The figure of Hobinol, and this was not only about the friendship, but it also consists most about the church and bishop of those times in England. So let us discuss something about his Cambridge University, his works, and Ireland, how these things were also affected. I will just portray in brief only. I can't go in so much of details. So in Cambridge University, it played a very important role in Spencer's life. His knowledge of traditional forms, themes of lyrical narratives, poetry, that foundations, that education provided him that Cambridge University provided him the foundation so that he can make his own original writings. And without knowledge of Latin, Italian, French examples of highly traditional marriage ode, he could not never have written that the great epic Epithalamion and his accompanying sonnet Amority. Now, if we talk about the Spencer's religious life, so as per not much is known about the religious life, but definitely it played a very important role in this also. We can see in various poetries is talking about Greek and mythology, somewhere religious. So now, by 1580s, Spencer had also started his work on the Fairy Queen, the very famous allegory poem by Edmund Spencer. And in the same year, in 1580, Spencer was made secretary to the new Lord Deputy of Ireland, Sir Arthur Lord Grey, who was friend of Sidney family. Sidney family, Sir Philip Sidney. He too was very much inspired by the work of Edmund Spencer. Now, what happened that he witnessed one of the massacre, that was the, I think, Samarwick massacre in 1580, and his poetry was even haunted by those things whatever happened, but he was a courtier, so like other people he too has to support Mr. Lord Grey. But he wrote a book that is a view of present state of Ireland, that was written by him in almost in 1595 and 96, but it was rather it was published in 1633. Here he discussed about the 16th century theory of rules and apply whatever the gentleness or whatever the massiveness happened, whatever the things happened, good or bad to the people, that in 1594, now, during the last years of Edmund Spencer, we say about that in 1594, in Ireland, Spencer continued his writing even with his job and all the things, job pressure, and he was appointed as a member of Queen's Justice for the Cork. But now, as we can clearly say that he was more of his. I was written over here also. He was devoted less to the poetry and more to less to the poetry and more to the rank of acceptability, despite his proclamation as poet. As we can clearly say that he was more devoted to the poetry, and this was the time he discriminated his job, and he made a twofold strategy for himself. Being on an official position also of the court of the London, he served well in placing himself as a poet and distinguished very well between the jobs and the poetry. Now, as we just discussed, in 1954, he was appointed as Queen's Justice for Cork. This was also the year of his passionate marriage, or rather second marriage, with Elizabeth Boyd, that was celebrated in his epic poem, Amority Sonnets and the Epithalamion. Now, but after a few years, when he was in Ireland, there was some kind of insurrection between in Ireland, and Spencer, though he was on a post of a sheriff, still he went to tell about these things to Queen Elizabeth, went to London. But unfortunately, he didn't survive this visit, and he died in London. And he was, and after his death, he was buried in Westminster Abbey, close to the grave of Geoffrey Chaucer. Epithalamion. Well, Edmund Spenser's Epithalamion was published in 1595 and a poem of 24 stanzas. It is about Elizabeth Boyle. In Greek, Epithalamion means the marriage song, a literal meaning of wedding chamber. Spenser took his form of poem from the wedding song of the first century BC Roman poet Catullus. This poem, the overall, if we say about the overall view of the poem, the poetry represents the celebration of welcoming a new person in life, or celebration of the beloved, or we can say celebration of wedding and legitimate passion and etc. This poem is divided into 24 parts, 23 stanzas and one envoy. And it is marked through, and this stanza we can these stanzas are marked through the timelines, and we can see here that Spenser addresses the muses many times. These muses are from the Greek and Roman mythology, who represent the various arts. Now let's have a brief about the poem. That this is one of the most classical inspired work of Spenser. This ode begins with an invocation of muses to help groom to awake his wife. Once the sun has risen, the bride finally awakes and begins her bridal bowel process. And then she comes to the temple, and here temple refers to the church actually, where the bride and the groom will be married with with all the ceremony or the works. And after the wedding ceremony, groom wants everyone to leave. And as the night comes, as the day comes to an end and the night starts rising, groom turns his thoughts towards the union, praying to gods to bless them and his newly wedded wife's womb with fertility and bless them with number of children. Now, talking about the rhyme scheme of the poem, Edmund Spenser's Epithalamion do not have any particular kind of a rhyme scheme. Rather, it is irregular kind of rhyme scheme. Then, sorry. Then I was saying that the number of verses in each of the stanzas is it is varying. Some are having the 19 verse, some are having the 18 verse. But the noticeable points are the stanza 15 and stanza number 23. Stanza 24. Stanza 24 is an envoy of 7 lines. Here, Spenser did a kind of confession or did a kind of conclusion. Here, he said that this poem is actual ornament for his would-be bride. He didn't gave any gift to her would-be bride. He didn't give any ornament or artificial. He said that you are so beautiful. This is the original ornament for you that I can gift you for our wedding. And stanza 15 is important because this stanza is consists of 17 lines. There is a kind of a break. Suddenly, the emotion of the poet or the groom changes as he realizes that this is really very sunny day and very hot day. Don't know if my would-be bride be able to come through it or not. So here we come up to the end of the Epithalamion. And next poem that we are going to discuss about the Prothalamion. The Prothalamion is written and coined by Edmund Spenser in 1596, written on the occasion of double engagement of daughters of Earl of Somerset, Elizabeth and Catherine Somerset, with H. Guilford and W. Peter Esquire. This betrothal was important in both matter of hearts and politics of England of those times. Now, let's have a brief summary of the Prothalamion. The Prothalamion starts with the Spenser as a narrator walking through the bank of the river, and he observes the beauty of the nature, sees that beautiful flowers are blooming, while he also sees that some of the nymphs are collecting the beautiful flowers in their basket. And while collecting the flowers, they see two of the beautiful snow white swans. They are floating in the river. Now the nymphs are attracted towards those swans. They went on this side of the bank, went on the river, went on the bank of the river, and they are saying, "Oh, they are so beautiful," and they are throwing the flowers on them and singing the blessing song along with it. But as we know that Prothalamion is only 10 stanza poem, Here, what Spencer did, that in last three stanzas, the narrator moves to the wedding venue in London, describing his own early life along with the beauty of the mansion where the wedding would take place. And further, in further paragraph, further stanzas, he compares the Earl of Essex, the father of the two daughters, with a brightly shining star in the sky, and with standing with two knights. Those two knights represent the groom of that particular betrothal or engagement. Now, here at last, because at coming to the last of the lines in this poem, the finally the narrator says the last, the men or the groom finally holds the hand of their bride so that they can have the wedlock, so that they can begin for their wedlock. Now, one of the important thing to be noticed here, that real significance of the poem lies less in the poetic achievement and more in its biographical values, as reflective of some of the pressure that Spencer feel in the outsider. Spencer felt like that I am an outsider. Though he did so much for the queen, still queen is referring, or queen is favoring the this Earl of Essex, as he is one of the most good person. He achieved so much for the England, but Spencer was kept out of all this politics. Well, talking about the similarly as epithalamion, this prothalamion does have that I should say irregular kind of rhyming scheme, and the each of the 10 of each stanzas has 18 words with irregular that's it, irregular rhyming scheme. Now, and here we can find with the poet as narrator, these 10 stanzas as memorable for refrain, sweet themes, run softly till I end my song. Poem is meditation on the marriage, nature and politics, weaving together nature, mythology, and politics of those times in London. Small discussion on the comparison of prothalamion and epithalamion, though there are numbers of differences or numbers of comparison we can do, but one of the major comparison, they are, first of all, they are said to be the sister poems. So but when we go through the comparison, there are very less similarities. I don't know why we call them a sister poem. Maybe because they both are the wedding songs, maybe whatever. Then further, first of all, what the thing we will notice is the name itself. Now, epithalamion have the prefix of epi, and prothalamion have the prefix of pro. And the second thing, this epithalamion is about Spencer's own marriage with Elizabeth Boyle. It was about his own marriage. Here he described everything about the bride, beauty of the bride. He described inner and outer beauty of the bride. He compared his bride to the nature. He compared how beautiful her bride is, that she don't even need the external ornaments to look beautiful. But when we come to the prothalamion, each of things are lacking. These things are quite lacking. We don't find that describing beauty of the bride. He just compared the bride to the beautiful white swans and else. What thing we can say similar? That is one thing we hear, though one thing is common in both, that is glimpse of Christianity. Both represent marriage culture or as of Christian marriage celebration. That's it. That both the marriages, they were, though Greek mythology was involved, though brides were compared either in prothalamion with the swans, or in epithalamion he compared his bride with Harpias as a brightly shining star, or sometimes he compared like other like moon, Cynthia and all. But the lacking thing in prothalamion is that flavor that would present that would say that about beauty of the bride. Only thing here common we found that he used some mythological figures in both the poems, and a glimpse of Christianity or the wedding that will be done in the same cultural way. Coming back to this is an RTC example. I have taken this RTC has already come in this our June 2016 exam, as well as it is also from our assignment question. So for writing the RTC, I have this is what I have collected from IGNOU books itself. So firstly, we need to know what is the RTC about. We need to give a brief intro about the RTC, that from which poem it is, who is the writer and when it was written, a brief small intro kind of the poem that I have mentioned. The poem is of Epithalamion, an ode written by Edmund Spenser along with Amority sonnets in 1595 for the occasion of his own wedding with Elizabeth Boyle. Now, second point is that extract explanation. Now, here we need to tell about the poem from where these lines have been taken, which stanza it belongs to, and and further we need to do the explanation of this poem. Now, third is the thing that is a rhyming. Third point is the rhyming scheme. Here, I want to say that if anybody don't know how to identify those, we have so many of the poems. If if anybody don't know that how to identify the rhyme scheme, we can just go through it like in here itself, the last word dreams were beams were, we can say a b a b. That can be, this is how we can identify. If not, we can skip this part, it's not that, but if we can try, we can do it. Please change the slide. Now the fourth point is reference to the context of the poem. Now, it depends on the poem. If this particular stanza has some kind of reference from its earlier stanza, then we can briefly describe in one or two lines that this stanza is belongs to how it is referred to earlier stanzas. And but if this stanza, these lines are taken from the particular, यानी कि जिस stanza से इस lines को लिया गया है, we need to tell briefly about those stanzas. Though in brief, but we need to tell what points are added, why that stanza is important, and what things are being mentioned over there. Now, fifth point is the literary devices like metaphor, allusion, visual imagery in the particular poem. It is according to the poem that part of the poem. Next and last is the sixth point is the most important. That is a brief intro about the poet. Like here, I have added that Edmund Spenser was one of the famous poet of Elizabethan age. With his own written pattern, his famous writings were the Fairy Queen. Means here we have to give a brief intro about the poet of the poem. Like in this poem, his writer is Sir Edmund Spenser. He was the poet of famous poet of Elizabethan age, and he had these kinds of achievement. This is what we can mention. This is here, I have given the complete RTC answer of this particular poem itself. So it's better not to waste time in reading this slide. Here I have given the rhyme scheme and further reference to the poem that we can go through by reading also. So that's why I'm not explaining, I'm not going in deep so that time should not consume long. Here also the literary devices. Please, I have included the questions from the previous years along with the RTC and large question or essay type question. In this essay type question, definitely, yes, yesterday we also discussed that introduction, body and conclusion. That is a major part of any essay type of question. It's up to us according to the question. For example, if I say the comparison between prothalamion and epithalamion, we can introduce with the introduction part where we can say about the poet and what was his achievement, what was the time period he was. Then in next part, in the body part, when we come, we have to give briefing of prothalamion and epithalamion of both the poems, so that when we go for the third part of the body, that is the comparison, we can give proper way of proper writing that yes, these are the differences between the two. And at last we can go with the conclusion. Here we can say that yet these two poems are the sister poems, and this is how they are different from each other, how what are the similarities, and what was the reason when did Spenser wrote these poems and all. Okay, so this is all for this session. Thank you so much for listening.